Good to see you all. Glad to be here. And thanks for the introductions, Matt. We're going to go through a little more formal introduction for a second, but pretty excited about this panel. One of the things I like about this is we've got people from all different kind of areas. I like to mix it up, so we've got the lawyer, but the inside lawyer, which is different than the annoying outside lawyer, someone who knows something about the business. We've got the chief commercial officer, and then we've got someone like Michelle who is all about partnerships and collaboration and mission, all the stuff that, we outside lawyers, we don't do mission that much, Michelle. We kind of do. Tell me about the deal. But anyway, so excited. I think we could come at this from a bunch of different angles, but I thought before we even get into anything, go around, let you guys explain a little bit more about what you do, how you got here, anything else that's particularly interesting, and then we could dig in a little bit. And I think there'll be questions 10 minutes before the end of this. We're not on the clock up there. I would have assumed it would. I'd look at the clock and there's no fouls. But anyway, why don't we start with you, Michelle? Let's talk a little bit about
Hello, can everybody hear me? Great. I think it's still morning. Good morning. Michelle Kim. I am with an organization called Stand Together, as Matt had mentioned. We are a philanthropic community comprised of several hundred, over 350 nonprofit organizations operating in 600 different communities. We also have incredibly generous donor partners, family offices that are all here together to tackle our society's some of the biggest issues. So that's why I'm here. And we also recognize that sports is an incredibly powerful and unifying vehicle for bringing individuals, philanthropists, teams, and communities together to mobilize around a shared vision of social change. But prior to Stand Together, I actually got to work with that guy, Dave Cluin, and with TGR Foundation, or Tiger Woods Foundation, for 21 years. I was part of the public-private partnerships, so got to experience firsthand the power of sports, and also individuals making a difference in our communities. So delighted to be here today.
Thank you. Scott?
All right. Great to be with you. Scott Sonnenberg, Chief Commercial Officer here at the Clippers, also Intuit Dome, Kia Forum, and the San Diego Clippers. I've been with the organization going into my 8th season, spent most of my career in Chicago with the Bulls. While I was in Chicago, oversaw partnership revenue, also entertainment. Steve and Gillian Zucker, our CEO, sold me on the idea of building a new stadium and all of the technology and all of the incredible features that it would entail. I didn't quite believe it at the time, but they, after a few different meetings, I was open to the idea and was very interested in the vision that Steve had. And here we are, sitting in that vision. So it's been a great run. As far as at the Clippers and what I do today, partnership revenue, partnership strategy, partnership marketing. On one side of the business, then on the other side of the business is the premium. So that's all of our premium sales and service team as well for the building. So 2 of the 3 revenue driving areas for the organization.
And Scott, when you were at the Bulls, you were clearly, this stadium was already there at the time, so quite a different experience for you when you come here and you have to do a little bit of sponsorship, a little bit of partnerships to get this open. It's quite a slog, isn't it?
Quite a bit. But even at the United Center, United Center's been around. I think it was '94 that it opened. And every year, you're continuously looking for ways to make things better. You look at 5 suites that are unsold, and how do we turn this into a club? You look at a empty space in the concourse and think, how do we turn this into a fan engagement area? You look at underneath the stands, an open space that's just gathering junk for years and years, and think, why don't we turn this into bunker suites or clubs? So every year you're reinventing. And coming here, it was, all right, if we have access to everything, we've traveled the world, taking all of the best ideas from all of the greatest stadiums and arenas in the world, how do we put them all into one space with unlimited resources? And that's what we've done here. So I don't think anything like Intuit Dome will be replicated anytime soon. This will be the standard for basketball arenas for many, many years to come.
It's beautiful, I must say. Derrick, so Derrick, you're a lawyer, so you just stick around and you just deal with statutes and stuff like that. And your job, nothing but worrying about statutes and laws, right? There's no other business elements in your life, correct? Oh, that was me. Sorry, I got that mixed up. But tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Yeah, I was going to say, thankfully not.
Yeah.
But yeah, Derrick Davis, been general counsel of Angel City for just over about a year now. My first day was the day that Willow Bay and Bob Iger closed their transaction to become owners of the club. And I have the good fortune of working on really, really big things like all of our front of kit partnerships, stadium or training facility naming deals that we'll talk about more today, to fundraising for the club, to player trades, transactions, transfers, loans, to we need to get a hot dog into the building, or we need to get a pinwheel for some random contest that we want to run. So it's a lot of fun. No day is the same, and I'm happy to be here to talk about it more.
Great, thanks. And last and least, so I'm Rich Brand. I'm the managing partner of ArentFox Shift's San Francisco office and the co-head of our sports group. And when people ask me what I do, I usually describe it as stuff. I'm a bit of a deal junkie, or a lot of a deal junkie. So I've done, 40 naming rights deals, hundreds of sponsorship agreements. I was in Scott's position at SoFi Stadium, where, we started with ground and then we built a pretty nice looking stadium and, did all those sponsorships, and now I'm doing the NYCFC stadium. So like I said, I do a lot of stuff and it's a lot of fun. So let's get started. We're going to start with you, Derrick, sort of follow through on what you were saying, because I kid about lawyers, but I do know that even on the outside, the best thing that the lawyer can do is sometimes help with a lot of the business stuff. Now, on the inside, it's not a matter of helping with the business stuff. It's really a matter of you balancing the legal risks with the club's purposes. And I do know from experience, when I first started, I think one of my clients called me Dr. No, which was not a good name. I think it meant they thought I was killing deals because I was too focused on some of the legal stuff. I'm not sure if I got to Dr. Yes yet, but I'll let you know. But so Derrick, let's talk about how you help, drive the deals and what and I think there is a little bit of a tension, isn't there, between the legal and the business? Because you want the business, but you also don't want to put yourself in a bad position.
Yeah, that's totally right. I didn't mention before that I sort of have a history of working at what you'll call startups. So I worked at Major League Soccer back in 2017, so before Messi, before FC Cincinnati, before LAFC, or when it was just getting started up. I worked at TikTok during the height of the pandemic, and now I'm here at Angel City. And so I think there's always going to be a tension when you're sort of driving new business, you're new on the block, and you want to capture value, and you want to capture it really, really fast. So you don't want to be the lawyer who slows things down, or you're the person that only says no. You always want to find pathways to yes, but to also be smart about it. So for what that looks like for us is really, really clear deal terms. So one thing that we do at Angel City is 10% of all of our sponsorship dollars that come into the door, we give it to an Angel City pillar. Or donate to funding an Angel City pillar. So that could be more women and youth playing soccer in LA, or that could be 3 million meals delivered with DoorDash. And we have to be really clear on how we structure those deals so everyone knows what they're getting into up front. And then we also have to be really careful to structure deals in that we don't overpromise, underdeliver, or we don't run afoul of any league rules. We're always coming up with really fun and cool and creative ways to do things, but we have to make sure that we keep in mind the CBA, league rules. We do a lot of things with community organizations. So we also, now I find myself thinking about the IRS and tax laws, or maybe ChatGPT has to think about it for me. But there's so many considerations that go into deal structures that it's fun to not only just be, hey, you're a lawyer and you only think about indemnification or limitation of liability. That would be my worst day at work, right? But more about value and driving it and capturing it and unlocking it and all those sorts of things.
So when you deal with your business people, and again, I've been doing this for a lot of years, I'm used to it, it's sometimes, I found what, you know, and I'd like to hear how you do that, I found that's and Scott could jump in on here because I'd like this to be sort of everybody jumping in. You're not looking for someone to say no. You're looking, I think one of my clients said, instead of identifying the problem, you need to identify the solution, because that's what you're looking for, right? You don't want me to say, hey, Scott, you can't do it. So in that role, how do you work with your partnerships and your sponsorship people to sort of get to something? Because there is a little bit of a tension there. You need to get the deal done. And here comes Derrick saying, well, you know, problem with that category is we won't ever be able to do another sponsorship for the rest of our life. And so, you know, how do you bridge that gap?
Yeah, I think as cliche as it sounds, it's really about building trust and building rapport, because the comments that I give my business team are not only, hey, we can't do it, but it's like, well, why would we give that, right? It's like, hey, for that dollar amount, we're giving away a lot versus another deal where we didn't give away that much, where it's like, hey, we're in this, you know, television category, but what about streaming, right? Do you want to leave that door open so down the line there's another opportunity with the partner? Because a lot of times as a lawyer, you'll see a contract maybe 2 years later and it's like, hey, Derrick, can we do this? And it's like, well, you know, without a conversation, we can't, right? Without that written consent that you always see in a contract, you can't unlock that value. So I think for me, it's not only advising my team on what we can and can't do, but also why do we want to do something and how does this structure us for the future? And then when you have that sort of value and insight, then the team is like, well, hey, Derrick, how should we structure it? And so they already think of me in a sort of a different framing and a different light that lets me add value, and we're all in it together. And then when I do say, hey, we can't do that, they're like, all right, well, I guess we really can't, because he's not always just defaulting to saying that.
Got it.
I'll jump in.
Please.
We have great legal counsel here at the Clippers as well, and we've had to really challenge them on a few different deals. You know, we announced our patch deal with Visit Rwanda a week ago, 2 weeks ago, and that was not easy to navigate. I mean, you're doing a deal with a tourism company based in Africa, and there were a lot of regulations around it. There was a lot of legal counsel that we had to receive outside of the organization as well, that are more familiar with deals like these, as well as the NBA. So a lot of folks had to weigh in on that, but ultimately it was about understanding what concerns they had, and then trying to find solutions for those concerns on our end. Our legal counsels, they're extremely solutions oriented, so they helped us get to that point, but it was difficult to navigate. I think the other thing that we struggle with a lot of times, you know, with the tug of war with legal, is just trying to determine what categories we can and can't sell into, because there's a lot of gray area, you know, with these categories, especially in technology. And so we may talk to one company that has one you know, category that we from our standpoint don't see that it would conflict. But then when you ask our CTO, George Hanna, he's like, well, actually, this is a bit of a gray area. And so then we have to decide, okay, is this worth bringing to the client that we currently have that may conflict with this incoming partner, or do we want to roll the dice? And 9 times out of 10, if we feel it's a gray area and could offend the partner, we will put a call into them and say, hey, we're going to be working with these guys. We just want to make sure that you're comfortable with it. And that just helps us maintain the relationship as well. So a lot of ongoing conversations that we have with legal, but ultimately very solutions oriented.
And we're going to come back to categories and exclusivity in a second. I do want to just get Michelle to talk a little bit about what she did. But one of the things I will say is you now know more about FARA and OFAC than you ever dreamed possible.
Yes, we do.
And you don't want to know any more about it, I would think. Yeah. I once said to a client something about, well, what about FARA? Who's she? So I said, well, she's something you have to be very mindful of. But so Michelle, let's talk about Stand Together, because when I was first, you know, when they first told me that you're going to be joining us, I do what everyone else does. I Googled it, I looked you up, and I'm trying to think, so little confusing here because you did everything that I'm used to not doing. You combine mission with business value and purpose. and and which is fabulous. And I've read an awful lot about it. Talk a little bit about how you blend that and how you bring value to partnerships, and I guess you design partnerships. It's very interesting, and I must say, it's not like I'm sitting here with someone who makes widgets and sells them. It's pretty interesting stuff, so why don't you explain it a little?
Great value in widgets and products as well, but yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, we're a bit of an anomaly, but I think in an area that it has significant potential, growth, and interest, and particularly in the world of sports. So we are a kind of an and proposition organization, right? So as to where revenue generating streams and activities and sponsorships are absolutely critical to business. The and comes in because when you combine business goals with community interest and community outcomes, you have magic. You all of a sudden have an opportunity to do kind of an always-on teams and leagues, have an opportunity to do an always-on fan engagement versus having it be kind of an episodic or performative, or it becomes the fulfillment center for your corporate partners, that one bit of brand equity in market. And you also have an opportunity to combine and increase kind of a premium for your sponsor corporate partner experience as well. And this also provides an opportunity for your community affairs or your community relations or CSR groups to be able to tap into a network and set of resources that are world-class that doesn't have to require in-house investments. So it affords a platform and a significant set of resources and capabilities that extends beyond your current team structure. So that's what we get really excited about.
So just if you could give an example of one of the things that one of your, sorry, I'm a deal junkie, one of your deals.
Sure. Deal shaping process is important, and rate cards extraordinarily important. I think one way we were able to add value, this is more of a kind of a current partnership that is evolving, and which, by the way, we don't think of partnerships as kind of a start-stop episodic partnership, but it's really an ongoing relationship building. So we work with, whether it's at league level, teams level, or it's sometimes player level, kind of the pain points. And we also kind of sit there and talk about kind of a common goal, share vision and common goals when it comes to having an impact in your community. So one example that I can give you right now, amongst just friends here, is how we work with NFL. So NFL has a number of national level community partners, and they have national campaigns. And one of the most popular campaign that NFL runs is called My Cause, My Cleats. Are any of you familiar with those? If I can see a hand of those folks. Oh yeah, so everybody, so you've seen it. And it also happens to be the most popular campaign that is led by the players, right? So it's more than just players being able to design their own cleats and being able to showcase and highlight and honor the community organizations or issues that they care about. But typically the way it has been historically with the league is that it's been limited to those 2 weeks where the My Cause, My Cleats campaign was actually active. And the players that got to design the cleats got to wear their cleats during those 2 games, and that was it, pretty much. So when they decided to partner with Stand Together, what we brought to the table was several things. One, be able to amplify My Cause, My Cleats. So it's more than just players identifying issue areas, but really have it be an always-on campaign. We can make this evergreen so that those issues, those communities, those causes could actually, live on beyond those 2-week time frame. So we also brought really compelling storytelling capabilities as well, and hopefully all of you will get to see some of the videos that may be shown later. For example, Saints, Demario Davis. He was actually a teacher. He was an educator before becoming a world athlete here on the field. So his legacy off the field, he really wanted to lean into and tap into his need and his desire to want to provide access and equity in education to his community members and broadly. And so, but if that were just attached to My Cause, My Cleats, the former campaign, a subset, maybe a small pool of people would have seen that and his cause and why he cared so much about education. But through the power of storytelling with Stand Together, our team was able to put together kind of the why behind why the Davis family decided to go into this space, and the work that they have done to be able to propel in solving community problems. So you do that over, several hundred players, maybe several thousand players, and all of a sudden, there's a kind of a groundswell of attention, awareness, and amplification. So that's one example, and I have many, many more where it comes to, and we are, by the way, partner agnostic. So we work across all the leagues, all the teams, and even some of the non-traditional sports entertainment fields. So anyway, more to come on that.
Great. And actually, jump on this a little bit, and I'll start with you, Derrick, but I want to hear what Scott says as well. So we're lead counsel for NWSL. We know what the NWSL, that's also a mission-driven organization. And one of the things that struck me, Derrick, was when I looked at some of the deals that I've seen at the NWSL level, I'm used to, I'm old in case you haven't noticed. So in the old days, what were the assets? You get, basketballs, you get tickets, you get suites, you get all of these things, basically good for the staff, good for the administration, good for the chief executive officers. And then that's changed so much now. Now it's really, what can you give me to help activate my business? And I think NWSL, and I know Angel City in particular, goes to a different level. I start seeing assets sometimes when I see that. They're not for your use. They're not even necessarily going to create revenue generation. They'll help with some young sports team and stuff like that. I feel like NWSL, similar to Michelle, is very, very mission-driven, and I'm assuming Angel City does the same thing.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So I think, one of the things that drove me to joining Angel City, sort of what I mentioned at the top is, 10% of all sponsorship dollars going to some cause that we've identified. And, right now, top of mind for us is access. So that's access for youth to being able to play sport, to play soccer, and that's gender expansive youth, food insecurity. And I think, as we sort of march to profitability at Angel City, we continuously have to ask ourselves, do you sacrifice impact in order to become profitable quicker? And at every step, we've said no. And I think that's something that's resonated for me and is very important. And then I think, also for us, to Rich's point, when we think about assets and the way we can help the community and the way we can activate, that's really what we think about when we look at new partnerships. So we think about missions, we think about values, we think about objectives, and how our partnerships can be structured in a way that not only make a difference in the community, but also drive revenue. But then the flip side, not only drive revenue, but make a difference in the community. And so I think that's what's really cool and unique about the approach that we have.
And the startups kind of leaked out their march to profitability, something that you've spent a lot of time even before this. So, and I think that's true about all new teams, but in particular, I think the NWSL is one of those things where you can sort of just see they're on a trajectory, which is quite a quick march. Quite a strong march. But Scott, same point though, a little bit different though. So you're with the Clippers, okay? NBA team. NBA's not a bad place. Got a little bit of fame and fortune there. But do you also find that your partnerships now do have to focus a lot on the community and the missions more than say 12 years ago, in your fourth year with the Bulls?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, every partner wants to be integrated into the community in some form or fashion. We have our own pillars that we focus on, but we're also open to what our partners are doing as well. We don't necessarily have a mandate of 10% of every deal that goes towards community. It's really needs-based. So if community relations comes to me and says, hey, we want to do this new program, we need some funding for it, we need $100,000. I know in my rate card that we have an asset that's going to cost $100,000, depending on what I feel the value is and the exposure that partner will get as the entitlement partner of that community program. We may charge X amount more for it, and depending on what the category is, if it's a small company that wouldn't necessarily spend in sports unless being able to have access to this community program, this may be 80% of the revenue. It may be totally community focused, and then there may be other brands that just want to tag on to other programs that we have, so it's a smaller percentage of the deal. So every one of them is unique, but ultimately the end result is the same in that community drives a lot of our deals, and community is a vital part of what we do. Steve Ballmer, for example, nobody knows how much he does in the community, not only here, but from a global standpoint. Sustainability, this is the most sustainable arena that's ever been built. Nobody contributes more towards sustainability efforts than Steve does globally. And so if he's going to build a building, it's going to speak to that. And so we brought on a lot of sustainability partners, in building Intuit Dome. So every deal's unique. Community is a big part of it, but we tailor it based on the needs of what that partner's looking for.
Well, you mentioned a couple of times the word category, okay? And you probably mentioned it a lot more times because at least my understanding is there's almost nothing more important than the concepts of categories and exclusivity or lack of exclusivity. And over the years, I've noticed, I think you mentioned the whole convergence thing. Now, back in the day, 30 years ago, I think I did a naming rights deal for MCI Center, which was and what was the category? Financial services. Seems like a good category. What does that mean? Everything. Every single thing. But I will tell you, back then, nobody cared. We did it, we signed it. Now, if I did a category that just said financial services and I represented the team, it would be the last transaction I get to represent the team, because when Scott comes by and says, hey, I've got this great new partner, I'd be, no, can't do that. Well, how about this? No, you can't do that. I mean, everything's financial services. So for all of you, let's talk a little bit more about, how you arrive at your categories and the issues of exclusivity, and and what some of those challenges are. You went into it a little bit before, Scott, but just the challenges of trying to make sure that this partner sponsor gets the value, but doesn't essentially preclude you from ever doing another sponsorship deal in the world. I think of payment systems, I think of financial, I think of credit cards, all that stuff. So anybody want to just jump in and you can all just sort of have something to say?
Sure. Well, we use Intuit Dome as the example. We started really selling Intuit Dome and generating revenue for it about 4 years ago, 4 years prior to open. So now we've been open for a year, so 5 years ago. And the first target was naming rights. I didn't want any categories to come off the board. I didn't want to do a founding deal with Kia when all of a sudden Toyota has this new initiative a year later and says, hey, we've got X hundreds of millions of dollars to spend with you guys, but we just did a founding deal with Kia. So, when you're building a new stadium, you first have to look, all right, what's my most valuable asset? It starts with naming rights. So we started there. We cast a wide net, talked to everybody throughout the world that we felt was a target, and ultimately landed on Intuit. Now, when we landed on Intuit, we thought at the time, as we were pitching them, that it was more like tax prep, small business type stuff. We had no idea the scope of the categories that they were involved in, because they were all financial. And so that changed the price, because as we were doing the analysis on Intuit Dome, what we thought the building could generate from a sponsorship standpoint, we had a list of categories that we felt like, all right, naming rights, who knows where it's going to come from. But the founding categories, they're pretty similar, 10 to 15 founding categories across most buildings. There's a few outliers out there. But we thought so when we talked to Intuit, they actually took up a few categories that we thought should be founding categories. So the original price tag actually went way up once we determined what categories they were interested in. And then there was a negotiation back and forth. So we land on Intuit, we see what categories they take, and then we look at all the rest of the categories. We look at soft drink. Soft drink is worth X million dollars. We went to the obvious partners out there, Pepsi, Coke, Dr. Pepper, everybody knows who they are. We didn't feel like we were getting the right amount that we had targeted in our original analysis for the soft drink category. So we start to carve it out. What categories live within soft drink? Well, there's water, there's isotonic, there's energy, and then there's this new category, which is healthy alternative beverages, which we didn't even know at the time. But the Ollie Pops and Poppies of the world suddenly popped up, and we thought, well, there's a whole new category there. So we carved those out. So, from my standpoint, it's, all right, how do we generate as much revenue as possible based on the available categories that are out there? Technology is another really complicated one because it's ever changing. And so you have to get really specific in these agreements to determine, what's protected and what's not, where can we carve out, because every category is worth something. And if we're charged with, again, generating revenue for the building, we've got to maximize that value. Now, the other piece of it is what assets do we have to build into the packages. So we're looking at categories, assets, and being as creative as possible in finding partners to help fill the building and help operate the building as well.
And by the way, that sounds like a fabulous way to do it. I'm used to the fees staying the same, but the categories expanding. Usually the conversation is, well, that is our category. So it's interesting. You basically make them pay for what they're getting. Great concept, interesting. Is Michelle, category exclusivity
Yes.
in categories, does that play a role in your life?
Absolutely. Our category is probably defined slightly differently because we start with an issue area. So education is a really broad issue area, but any community, they're contending with something related to education. So one of the key focus area for Stand Together in our market approach or strategic approach is that we believe education, not only should everyone have access and equity in education, but also alternative pathways to success. So not just one size fits all where it's degree dependent for every single person, but that there are more kind of skills-based, experiential type of ways in which you can build your career and pathways to success. We also fundamentally believe that every single person and the human potential of every single person to live a life of meaning and purpose. So given that as a premise, working with partners, so here's an example. We're currently working year 2 of a 3-year agreement with Atlanta Hawks, State Farm Arena, right? And we started out saying, hey, how can we be of assistance and help in you guys building out a community-wide initiative? And there are several issue areas that we were working with the Hawks on developing. And one of them was actually on future of work or workforce development. So they have employees or part-time staff members that they really wanted to nurture, right, and want to retain, but didn't really have a vehicle to do that. So through our partnership, we actually built out a sales sessions or certification program, a workforce development program in conjunction with them. We also kind of deconstructed different careers that exist within sports, and particularly with State Farm Arena employees, to showcase. Melissa Proctor is their chief marketing officer. She did not have a linear pathway to her success. As a non-college graduate, she started out as a ball girl in the arena to rise to a CMO. So her journey and her story is really inspiring. So we actually took that and built out a whole campaign around alternative career pathways. So, and that's another thing. The other thing we learned with Atlanta Hawks experience is that our hypothesis was, okay, we have this partnership and we have an audience year-round. So part of my group is not just sports, but sports, music, and entertainment. So when we do have access to the public and the fans, how do we actually leverage that platform for engagement, for social change? And so that became kind of a query. And so we experimented around a lot of different things year 1 and landed on several things. So there's some integration or year-round in-venue things that we are able to do through that partnership. The other one is with, as you guys know, because you guys are hosting some of those games, is World Cup that's coming. We have a mega decade of sports ahead of us, and LA is a host to 2 of the biggest world sports. So with World Cup coming, our, again, premise was the whole world, the eye is going to be on World Cup. How do we capitalize and harness the power of that kind of visibility to bring attention and activate and mobilize around social change? So one of the key issue areas that we're also contending with is creating more volunteerism and creating what we call a culture of contribution, so that the long after the final whistle blows with World Cup, that the legacy of that game is transformative for our communities. So we partner with U.S. Soccer Foundation, for some of you guys that know. And with U.S. Soccer Foundation, our goal is to train 100,000 coach mentors so that they become part of the community leaders and they have a significant and profound impact in the lives of young people in those communities. So that's our charter. and we're working directly with the U.S. Soccer Foundation, and now we have an agreement from 4 of the host cities to actually have U.S. Soccer Foundation program called Yes Coach to be part of their legacy program in those cities. So we're really happy and proud of that initiative. Hopefully everybody will sign up for Yes Coach, and it's also going to be in Spanish, so C Coach as well. And there are a few other examples like that. And the last thing I'll tell you in terms of media entertainment category is we are working with Imagine Entertainment on supporting the launch of Summer of '94 documentary. So Coach Bora, for many of you guys know, is an inspiring story of taking this ragtag team and creating this kind of a Cinderella story around summer of '94. So we're involved in a whole host of aspects of public engagement. So.
Great. Derrick.
Yeah, I'll quickly jump in. I'll tell a funny story. So when I was working at Major League Soccer in 2018, we were thinking of partnering with Chick-fil-A. And I think it was going to be their first ever soccer sponsorship. And Chick-fil-A said, we want exclusivity for everything on our menu. Like, you know us for, chicken and fries, but we've also got this really nice pancake that we're working on. And we've got all these different categories, and we want exclusivity for it all. And so what we had to do was we sat in a conference room and we wrote out every single menu item of Chick-fil-A, and we put a check or X next to it of, we can give them that, we can't give them this, we can give them that, but maybe we've got a partnership with IHOP, cooking up, and we want to preserve breakfast. So I think that's how granular some of these conversations may get, where you have like a brand and they're like, this is what everyone knows us for, to Scott's point, but it's like we do all these other things. And I think, a lot of it also is trial by fire, right? So Angel City is in its 5th year, going on its 5th year of existence, our 4th year as a soccer club. And so, we could literally have deals that have just been with us the entire time, right? And so what looked good 4 years ago might not look good today. And, thinking about like Heineken is something that always comes to mind. It's like, the 0.0 wasn't a thing until how long ago, right? And then also, Gatorade is a good example that comes to mind. So you have like them as your on-field hydration partner, but now you have hydration partners that just want to be lifestyle, right? It's just like, I'm walking down the street, but I've got this, Unwell brand is one that comes to mind. So there's different ways that people are starting to carve up categories that sometimes you just have to learn from it and say, okay, well, the next time this comes up, we want to carve this out and just sort of, incrementally make strides to where you want to be.
The proud pancake partner. That's great. Well, let me ask you another question. If you guys have seen, relating to category, one of the things I'm seeing lately are I don't know if it's exploding category or explosive category, because a lot of the sponsors I'm dealing with, particularly if the money is a large enough number, okay, we just want to add this little provision. If at any time the sponsor determines that it's expanded its category to include this, that, or the other, sponsor shall have the right to expand its category accordingly, and maybe it says provided that, if you have someone who's specifically in that area. And most of my clients, it's a real bit of a buzzkill, isn't it, Scott? You do a deal with this, and then you get to deal with that. Are you seeing that, and how do you deal with that? Because I do understand the sponsor's point, which is, hey, this is what we do, I want to be promoted, but I also understand the venue and team's point, which is, hey, I need to be able to sell different categories. I need some certainty. Do you see these expanding categories at all?
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think it's always a tough or interesting and nuanced conversations when you're at the table with your partner, let's call it, right? Because it's like you're dating, but then you're also trying to talk about like what happens if things go wrong or if they don't look like they do today. And so you want to be able to capture value, but also protect yourself in the future. So it's a little bit of a song and dance. And I think usually the way that I've seen it be handled is ultimately you kind of want to hope that you land on some sort of, right of first refusal. It's like, hey, well, you're not in this category today, so let's hold off on that. But if you do get into that category, come to us and we'll talk about it. But if we've got a partner and we want to actually execute and we can execute on that, then we'll come to you and say, hey, you either match this or it's gone. It gets a little messy because now you've got another partner that's on the side and you sort of, you've cooked them up, no pun intended, and they're interested and they want to, that really want to do this partnership, but you also have these other obligations that you have to sort of check the box on. But I think sort of being in that space is something that we try to land on, as opposed to just giving away a category, sort of blocking it and holding it. And sometimes we also see maybe you can activate for a little bit of time and then it'll be carved back because we don't really have something in the hopper or the pipeline until down the line. It's like, hey, we really got to get them in the door, and if we don't do this, they might walk, and so there's always a song and dance to it. But I've seen creative solves that ultimately, try to protect as much value as possible.
Yeah, and Scott, just to talk about it a little more, I almost know what you would be saying here, but these provisions I'm talking about, they leave out the sentence that says, and sponsors shall pay an additional amount for such new category. That sentence is often lacking, and the view is that you talk about a right of first refusal. I'm talking about, hey, this is reasonably related to what I do, I just want to get it. I'm assuming based on your earlier conversation, if somebody wants more, they're going to probably pay more.
Absolutely. Yeah, we won't put a number in the category that they're looking to acquire down the line, because we really don't know what that's going to be worth, in a year or two from now when it does become available. We also try to avoid, right of first refusals. We'll do right of first negotiations, because if I'm a sponsor coming in and I know there's an incumbent there, probably one of the first questions I'm going to ask is there a right of first refusal? Because that puts me in a really difficult negotiating position if I'm a sponsor coming in and there's an incumbent. So I like to be able to tell them that it's a right of first negotiation and that there's a window, maybe a 30 to 60-day window, where I am negotiating with the incumbent. And should we not reach an agreement, then I can tell the other sponsor potential sponsor that wants to come in that, hey, by August 1st, if the deal is still available, we can come to you and negotiate in good faith without somebody being able to, to be able to match that offer. But, it doesn't always work that way. It also depends on who the company is, what the category is, how much they're spending for it. Larger categories have a little bit more leverage than smaller categories. So, there is no one size fits all, but that's typically the route that we try to go.
And it's funny when you say that. I don't know if you guys have the same experience. It's sort of trying to figure out what is really meant. I have so many clients who will say right of first refusal, and I'll do just what first thing I do. It's very subtle. I go. And then after I'm finished doing that, I explain, you do understand no one's ever going to negotiate with you again, because once they know that all you're doing is negotiating a better deal for somebody else, they're going to say, no, thank you. So they said, I don't think there's anything wrong with telling a good client of mine, a good partner of mine, that if a category comes up, I'll have conversations with them. So I said, I don't think there's anything wrong with that either. But you said right of first refusal, and I get, oh, whatever. It's the same. And I think that's one of the things, and Derrick, for you as the lawyer, you have to tell them there's right of first offer, there's right of first refusal, there's right to match, and they're not the same. In fact, half the time, what I've sometimes done is they have a right of first refusal in the contract, that's the heading, and then I put in a right of first offer, and they'll go, yeah, that's right. So it is one of those things. I mean, you must find that particularly with you, where your salespeople are thinking, it sounds fine, but, this is where the words matter for the lawyers, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And so I think, we'll have these conceptual themes, but then my job is to go in and say, well, how long of a lead time do you need to discuss this? When do you want notice by? When do you want to be, quote unquote, free to go and do a deal with anyone else? And usually the more you start to discuss those things, it's like they're not as aggressive as they initially once were, and sort of they're going to now go back to the partner and say, yeah, maybe we can't do that. But to Scott's point, it's really going to depend on, the category and the asset itself, right? So like your naming rights partners, your front of kit partners, or sleeve sponsors, you may have a little more flexibility for them than you do, someone who is non-exclusive and, they're a value add, but it's just in a different way from a monetary investment. So it all is context driven and case by case.
Right. So I'm going to start with you, Michelle, on this, but I want everyone to jump in. It's literally impossible to be sitting in this arena when you look around and not at least have one question on innovation and technology and AI. Although, to be honest, it's impossible to have any conversation and not say AI anyway. But let's start with that because, Michelle, I want to talk a little bit about sort of, the role that innovation and technology and AI has in your day-to-day and long-term business. Because I was just saying one thing. As a lawyer, AI has a very big role on how we do things. But in your world, it's not only how you do things, it's kind of what you're doing. So kind of curious to hear the impact it has on you.
Absolutely. And technology plays a significant role, not in terms of all of the kind of the analytics, fan engagement and behavior. I'm sure that's something that you guys do all the time, data mining. But in the world of social impact in sports, for our side, there are several ways in which we leverage technology, and AI is one in terms of kind of reaching the masses and the way in which that we can reach the general public and the fans. It provides greater flexibility in terms of reach and vehicle and platforms. And then on the back end, kind of some of the behaviors that we are able to more quickly respond and co-create the type of fan engagement, always on fan engagement opportunities through, obviously, the access that we have with technology. We also use AI in some of our initiatives. So instead of having it be kind of this one-sided, getting the messaging out there, so I think everybody would agree that access and equity to education is important, but rather than speaking at the public or the fans, the technology and AI provides an incredibly powerful vehicle for us to have this interactive, experiential experience. So that's another way that we're able to leverage technology. And then also we're learning from partners like Scott and the Clippers and how they're, things like biometrics and things like that. It's absolutely astonishing what you are able to do. So we're learning from our partners and taking cue from our partners in leagues and teams, how we can best, again, kind of tap into the advancements that are being made and emerging technologies so that we can come alongside and be additive to what you're doing.
And Scott, the first event I came to at Intuit Dome was the Billy Joel concert. It's the only time I've ever gone to a concert and I didn't show my ticket. I didn't take it out. I didn't do anything. I'm just walking. And I'm thinking, it did take me a while to sign up, but so how has that played, both in terms of the technology and the innovation you guys have, but also just, sitting in that back room doing the proposal, do you have Gemini or ChatGPT or something put together the proposal, give me a PowerPoint, talk about the main drivers, tell me about Stand Together, come up with the 10 most important things? Do you use it as a general rule?
We're just scratching the surface on it. So first, from a sales standpoint, so we may use AI to help us build proposals. There's companies that are starting to emerge in the sports landscape that are building these for teams now, so we're just getting started with that. We've used AI from a sales outreach standpoint in working with third-party agencies who have partnered with other AI sales-driven agencies that they've brought to the table for us, which has allowed us to cast a wide net and get us some meetings. So I think we're just getting started on that. Now, we are going to be announcing a partnership here in the next probably couple of weeks with an AI company. It'll be the first of its kind in the NBA that I know of, and so more to come on that. But they are working very closely with our CTO right now on a lot of different projects, of which he would be far more qualified than I am to speak on. But we are using AI really throughout the organization at this point.
Derrick, you guys, what do you do?
Yeah, so I'll jump in as well. So on the commercial side, thinking about how we can be more data-driven and more targeted in our approaches, we're seeing that across the business. But one interesting thing for us is really on the soccer operations side. So we're able to our soccer operations folks are able to go in and say, we want to find someone who's going to fit exactly to our style. So you can plug in, possessions-based, attacker, dominant, all the styles that we want to be on the pitch, and then the AI can generate, here's some list of players who maybe you might not have had your eye on that will fit this profile. And I think also one of the cool things for us is that it also has the if used right, it can unlock or enable, or I should say, remove bias, right? So it's like, hey, you know, we really love Brazil or Colombia. We find all of our players there. But if you plug something into AI and it's like, well, there's this really exciting player out of Japan that exactly matches your playing style, you know, not to say that one player is better than another, but they actually just possess your playing style better, or more to a tighter fit. That's also what we're seeing across AI. And so it's helping us double our efforts and just be in a lot more places than you can physically of hopping on a plane and, you know, standing on a pitch and watching, you know, people scrimmage. It's a little bit more enhanced.
Got it. We're going to go into questions in a second, but I have a question for all of you. How many of you use AI in your work? There you go. I had a partner who said, oh, I don't use any of that BS. It's ridiculous. It doesn't work. So I said, I think it does work. So he said, well, you know, what about if I wanted to have a put agreement? So I had to draft a put agreement. Yeah, but it doesn't do that. Make a change. So we went about 10 minutes going through that, and he looked at me and he said, oh my God, I'm so glad I'm retiring soon, because I just can't believe the way this works. For me, I think it's the two things. You have to get used to it, because that's just going to be there to stay. But the other thing is, one of my clients calls it trust and verify, because we all know those wonderful hallucinations. I think I was working on a acquisition of a hotel, and we wanted to know if the mansion tax was applicable, and my good friend Harvey, who we use, my good friend Harvey said that the tax is not applicable, blah, 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 blah. Gave a statute, gave a quote. It was fabulous and wrong. And if I hadn't checked it, I would have gone to my client and said, there's a $5 million number you don't have to pay. And ultimately, I think there would have been a $5 million number I would have had to pay. So you do certainly have to verify it. I've got a bunch of questions here, but let's see. Does anyone here have some questions they'd like to ask? We've only got
two mics on either side, so if you do, raise a hand. We'll get the microphone to you. Questions from this panel of experts. Here we go.
Hi, hello. My name is Martijn Lindeman. Pleased to meet you. I'm the founder of Follow. We're building a new social network, and I heard you talk about how you'd like to engage your sports companies with the community. And I'm wondering if a company like ours would work with you. Do you have like exclusivity with TikTok, Meta, and such?
Well, from our standpoint, we don't have any exclusivities in those categories. So yeah, we're open to any conversations. From my standpoint, I'm obviously looking at the revenue that's coming in on the deal. So if we bring a company to the table, how much revenue are we going to be getting from that? Now, from the technology standpoint, does it actually fill a need? Because if it doesn't fill a need, one thing about the building, the theme around the building from the beginning was, we don't want technology just for technology's sake. We want everything technology related to make the experience better for the fan. And so that's what you'll see all throughout. So if there's a tech partner and we get incoming calls from tech partners that want to be able to work with us, and then the first conversation I have is with our CTO, and are you familiar with this company? And 99% of the time he's like, yes, I am, and yes, they can fill a need, or no, they cannot, and then the conversation doesn't go any further. Now, the only exception to that is when I come to the table and I say, hey, I've got this company that's interested. He's like, well, they're not, I don't know if they really fit for us. I said, all right, well, they have X million dollars. He's like, all right, well, we'll figure it out. And so there is a little bit of like, all right, if we can work with them and it makes business sense and they are willing to spend on the sponsorship side, then yeah, we can usually make it work.
And from our side, it's reach and influence and impact when we work with any and all partners, and particularly with technology platforms and technology partners. Not only do you have access and reach in the general public, but also how do you engage the public? So it doesn't become a static experience, but really experiential, interactive, and lasting. And does the platform allow that type of engagement that's sticky, and also that creates additional movement? So it's not always us having to drive and force action, but then the technology is the vehicle for leading to that action. So that would be a perfect partnership.
Yeah, and I'll say similar to Scott's answer as well. It's like we engage on all of the social media platforms, or all the main ones. you can say. And then on the vendor side, where we look at technology and how it's going to benefit the club, that's really where our analysis lies. And that's where you'll sort of see, okay, well, this person is our exclusive ticketing warehouse and our dashboards where we get all this information, or here's where we go to find out more about our fans and our customers and our fan segmentations and the funnels and all those sorts of things. So it really depends on the technology, but we're always looking to innovate and grow and reach new audiences and find out more, and also be able to serve in the best manner. So I think, it's always a conversation, as Scott summed up.
Great. Any other questions? Over here.
Hi, my name is Sierra. I'm a freelance journalist, and I also work with the LA Kings in their hockey development department. My question, you said that AI is a use it, like get with the program sort of thing, but I would say that in the general public, it's still a very polarizing issue. There's a lot of people who are not willing to participate, and a lot of people who are willing to blindly participate. My question for you, Scott, in Intuit Dome's use of biometrics, do you think that you are mitigating a group of people who are not willing to participate in that sort of technology?
It's a good question. We knew we were ahead of the times a bit, and it showed early on with, how difficult it was early on for our fans to come through what I would have said in the past, the turnstiles, when having to put all of their information in an app with biometrics and on and on. But for that reason, if you've come to an event here, you'll see the plaza just staffed to the brink with customer service people that are willing and able to help every step of the way. So yeah, we felt we knew it was going to be a little soon. We also knew that this is where things are going, and we were comfortable with that. Our whole goal was eliminating lines and eliminating, the clutter, having to carry a ticket, having to pull out your phone and whatnot. So if you take, 30 to 60 seconds to download the app, put your information on there, you don't need to take out your phone, you don't need to take out a ticket. You just come up to Intuit Dome, they recognize you, they welcome you by name, you go to the concessions, the gate opens, you grab whatever you want. Steve's vision was, how do we turn the Intuit Dome into my family room? And if I'm in my family room and I want to use the restroom, I don't want to wait in line. I'm just going to go use the restroom. And so you heard all the buzzwords around the restrooms, and there's 3 times the number of restrooms as you would typically find at a venue. That's all true here, never a line. Concessions, never a line. Merchandise, never a line. You grab things off the rack and you just walk out. So the purpose was to solve a problem. And problems that people have in coming to venues are lines, and we wanted to eliminate all of that. Now, even with AI, yeah, there is this gap there. I've got a bunch of kids at home, and I had my 18-year-old just last night said to me, hey, I learned this really cool thing on ChatGPT, and I can talk to it, and on and on and on. I'm like, yeah, I showed you that like 6 months ago. But because one of your friends showed you, all of a sudden now it's cool. And so what's been interesting to me is the younger generation, they're usually the first adapters. They're usually the ones coming to me with the cool technology, but it's actually the other way around with AI. They are the teenagers and whatnot. They're not really grasping onto it. My kids would say that, AI is for old people right now. And I'm shocked by that, but there is this gap. And so with all technology, there's going to be a little bit of a gap. We did this at Intuit Dome because we knew that's where it was headed. And people who have come and are season ticket holders, they love it. They love it. First time, attendees, there's a little bit of a learning curve, but for that reason, we've staffed up to address it.
Well, I'll tell you a funny story about two things. Number one, I think the point I was making, not that you have to use it, but ultimately it's coming, you're not going to stop it, so you might as well get comfortable with it. But I think, more than even just the fact that you have to use it, someone once told me, I would never use AI. So I said, do you use Google? Yep. Do you know that little round thing that shows up when you ask them? That's AI. And they're sitting there thinking, no. And similarly with someone told me, swear to God, when I came to my first event here, they said, I wouldn't be comfortable giving up all my information, walking into an arena like that. That's really scary. So I said, do you have a phone? And they said, yes. I said, it's too late. You've already done that. So I think it's a lot of it is sort of educating people to understand. And like I said, I think the trust and the verify is true because you can't let it take over everything, but it's here. So.
Anyone else? Oh, here we go.
Hi. Good morning, good afternoon. I'm Julian Antolin. I work for the City of LA, but I will speak on my personal behalf. I am a Clippers fan, and a reason I am a Clippers fan is because of your partnership with the community. I moved to LA 8 years ago, and one of the first questions that I had was, are you a Lakers fan or Clippers fan? And I had to make a choice. And it turned out that when my son started to play basketball, and I was impressed by he was playing at the Recreation Center, at the YMCA, and all the court were amazing, beautiful LA Clippers. And all the kids can play, participate to basketball leagues for a very reasonable price, and they have a really great uniform with Clippers on it. So that was really creating the link between the community and the brand Clippers. And that's the reason why we have decided to be a Clippers fan. So I just wanted to share that with you, and that indeed social media can be very efficient, but the direct relationship with the community, I think, is really key, and I really hope that you will keep doing this job. And so congratulations on that, and I hope that you will keep doing it.
Well, thank you very much. We love our Clippers fans. They are passionate, and they stick with us. And community has always been an important factor for us. You look at the community courts. Several years ago, the city came to us and said, "Can you help us refurbish a handful of courts?" And we said, "Sure." It was a handful of outdoor courts, and our question back was, "Well, how about we do all of the courts?" And how many is that? We said, "Well, all the outdoor courts is 100-something courts." All right. Well, how about indoor courts? All right. Well, that's this much more. And so now, multiple millions later, we come to find out that there's this huge need to refurbish every single court that they had identified, and Steve said, "No problem, we'll just write the check." I'll even tell you on a personal level, my wife and I do some work at an orphanage down in Tijuana, and we raised some funds for the orphanage, and Steve heard about it, and Steve said, "How much did you raise?" And I told him $50,000. He's like, "I'll match it." And so we built a playground for an orphanage down in Tijuana. That's the kind of person that Steve is. Steve is an incredible human being. And I've been in sports for 22 years, and he's a good man. And it's been a privilege to be able to work for him. But he is always looking at, how do I impact others? How do I impact the community? How do I make other people's lives better? And in purchasing the Clippers, he's been able to do that on a local level, but he also does it on a global level as well.
Can I add something to that? We've also found that when they're the owners, they set the tone when it comes to the philanthropic imprint of that community and the team and the team identity. So it's not surprising that the Clippers and Steve are not only leading in innovation, but the tone set by the Ballmer family and Steve, it transcends, right? It trickles. So as a matter of fact, Steve's team, the corporate partnerships and community relations team and Stand Together are meeting tomorrow, right, to see how we can join forces and make 1 + 1 = 100 for the benefit of the community. And a lot of times it's really driven by the owners and their commitment. So you guys are in good hands.
And you're all invited to come to the meeting. I think we're a little bit out of time, probably a lot out of time, so I just wanted to thank all you guys for the great job, and thank you all for coming, and appreciate it.
How about a great round of applause for this great group?